Hey everybody, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? I'm hanging in. Um, I haven't done a video in quite some time. It feels like forever, but I know it's not. Um, so I tried doing an oracle card reading and I just barely made it through. So my neck and my back were out. I have a bone spur on C6, C7, and it was inflamed. It shot up to my head and shot down the rest of my spine. I was in so much pain. I could not move for days. I just slept. I had the worst migraines. It was terrible, terrible. I don't really wish any spinal issues on anybody, but mine, oh my goodness, ouch, bad. So I did that oracle reading, like, oh, I feel a lot better. It gets even better. It gets better from there. I woke up the next day after that oracle card reading, couldn't breathe. And no, I don't have the 19 thing. Nope. I have a cold. Not a good one. So I started to doubling up on my vitamins. I always take them. I have elderberry vitamin gummies, vitamin zinc, and D3, and a B complex, magnesium, L-lysine, and I've been taking that. And finally, I'm still congested. You could hear it in my voice, but I'm way better. Also, these I have gotten my shirt from a lovely, lovely woman. Pop a drop. This helped me so much. This helped me breathe, and it helps with allergies, which is very normal for what time of the year, especially now. It just snowed in New York, but the week before it was warm. So there's up and down, up and down, up and down nonsense. A lot of people, also the 5G, also a lot of direct energy weapons is happening to light workers. I'm not the only one feeling this way at all. A lot of people are out. It's the ending of the evil. It's still permeating. They're still in their death roll. They're not wanting to give up. And this is perpetuating now, and they're attacking the light workers once again. So mind you, it's been very rough week and a half for me. So I do apologize for not being able to come on and do like what I normally would love to do. I am still recovering, and within doing that, I have not been able to get many things done because I couldn't move to get my books. Couldn't get up. I crawled 98% of the last 6 days. Today was my first, I got up and I had a lot to take care of. So a wasp bay is on its way. I'm going to do another reading from a wasp bay. I'm not sure what I want to do yet. It might be the next. I'm going to give you a hint. What comes after Osiris? That's a big and very long chapter, so I have to break it down. I am still selenite. No, not that book. My favorite philosopher ever. I'm getting there. I'm getting through. The Law of One I'm still working on. I'm still working on a lot of stuff. I was not prepared to get sick. I was not prepared to feel the worst I felt in 3 years. And that's really, honestly, it's nothing. But my body doesn't like me that much, especially with the pain and the back and the neck. Like, there's no functioning when I'm like that. So I will have to make it all up, but I'll get there. Tonight, of course, Spirit was like, oh, well, you're not feeling good, but you can get to these. What is happening in our world today? What I just kind of mentioned, right? What's been now? We're going on year 3. This is Albert Camus. Albert Camus. I love him. I have just about all of his books and read them. I love him. Love, 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 love Albert Camus. Genius. He's a genius. And let me tell you why he's a genius. We have the plague. Resistance, rebellion, and death. The rebel. Exile in the kingdom. He also has the fall and the stranger. What does that remind anybody of? Knock, knock. Who's there? What's been happening in our world? Knock, knock. I just want to put this out there. As I was mulling through if I had the 19 thing or not, and I don't, I got tested. It's a farce anyway. A lot of people are starting to find the truth out. A lot of people are now starting to look at the patents. A lot of people are starting to open up the eyes to the agenda. And while, like, where, you know, unfortunately, where I am in New York, I post articles on my social media as much as I can that will link to Facebook, unfortunately. You can't get a babysitting job. You can't be a dog walker because you're required to show your papers. And it's becoming very much true. A lot of people want a person that's vaccinated in their house to watch their children, even though your kids really aren't at risk, but they're telling you all kinds of nonsense. So, and I have to be very careful how I talk about everything. when the truth comes out, I need to know what kind of compensation I'm going to be getting. Because I'm now at the 0 point in a lot of my accounts. I'm at the point where I can't pay bills. And this is World War III, possibly 4. I think this is World War IV we're in right now. And there are casualties of war. But I didn't ask for this. And I didn't ask for everybody else to be able to have a job. And everybody's going on about their life like nothing happened. Well, everybody's covered up. And they look like mongooses. I mean, and that's your choice to do that. It's great. I didn't ask to have. I didn't have a choice. I wasn't given one. It's like, sorry, you're. So, and I've been asking all over the place, anybody have a job? And it's nothing but scams. On Gab, on all kinds of, I want to work. Besides doing this stuff, I want to work. And let me tell you, Scam City, everywhere you go. Scams. Everywhere. I'm just trying to be a wholesome person to want to work. I'll go get gift cards. Scams. All of them. Everywhere. Don't fall for it, guys. I'd rather have everything shut off and me not be here anymore than have to deal with people taking advantage of me. And one more thing. I don't ask anybody to do anything for me besides pray. If you want to do something nice for me, you do it because it's in your heart to do so. Everybody that has thus far donated to help me out during this ridiculous time that we're all in has done so from the pit of their heart. And I really, really appreciate all the help that I already have received. And the prayers and the sharing of my page and the sharing of all my videos. I appreciate that. It means something to me, and it really does. I'm loving reading the comments. I love hearing from people. But I'm going to be honest, if you are going to slam me and compare me to yourself, I'm not paying you any of my energy anymore. I don't compare my situation unless it's another New Yorker that lost their job in a similar fashion to myself. That's also fallen on hard times. I'm not wishing anybody negative anything. I hope this world changes and it changes really quickly. And according to a few people that I've been listening to, things are coming about. But again, we're at war and there's negative things going on. Can't help that. And I can't help my situation either. I am trying each and every day. Even when I was sick, I was on my phone looking for jobs. Everything I have applied to thus far, sorry, we have the position already filled. Sorry, you need to be vaccinated. Sorry. It's the reject train. It's my life. But that's okay. I will somehow persevere. Albert Camus, The Plague. I'm going to read some excerpts from here and possibly 2 other books. I might go into third. Depends how fast. Okay, hang on. Sorry, guys. Needed a drink. So, let's read the back. A gripping tale of unrelieved horror, of survival and resilience, and of the ways in which humankind confronts death. The Plague is at once a masterfully crafted novel, eloquently understated and epic in scope, and a parable of ageless moral resonance, profoundly relevant to our times. In Oran, a coastal town in North Africa, the Plague begins as a series of portents unheeded by the people. It gradually becomes an omnipresent reality, obliterating all traces of the past and driving its victims to an almost unearthly extremes of suffering, madness, and compassion. Well, what have we have here? If the iron didn't strike once, it struck twice. But the bubonic plague. The bubonic. What is more exceptional in our town is the difficulty one may experience there in dying. Difficulty, perhaps, is not the right word. Discomfort would come nearer. Being ill is never agreeable, but there are towns that stand by you to speak when you are sick, in which you are. After a fashion, let yourself go. An invalid needs small attentions. He likes to have something to rely on, and that's natural enough. But at Oran, the violent extremes of temperature, the eccentricities of business, the uninspiring surroundings, the sudden nightfalls, and the very nature of its pleasures call for good health. An invalid feels out of it there. Think what it must be for a dying man, trapped behind hundreds of walls, all sizzling with heat, while the whole population sitting in cafes or hanging on the telephone is discussing shipments, bills of lading, discounts. It will then be obvious what a discomfort attends death, even modern death, when it waylays you under such conditions in a dry place. These somewhat haphazard observations may give a fair idea of what our town is like. However, we must not exaggerate. Really, all that was to be conveyed was the banality of the town's appearance and of life in it. But you can get through the days there without trouble once you have formed habits. And since habits are precisely what our town encourages, all is for the best. Viewed from this angle, it is life not particularly exciting, that must be admitted, but at least social unrest is quite unknown among us. And our frank-spoken, admirable, and industrious citizens have always inspired a reasonable esteem in visitors. Treeless, glamourless, soulless, the town of Oran ends by seeming restful, and after all, you go complacently to sleep there. So down in further into the story, you meet some characters, things are starting to happen. And of course, this is just a story, but it reflects what's going on right now. However, he rang up the municipal office. He knew the man in charge of the department concerned with the extermination of vermin, and he asked him if he had heard about all the rats that were coming out to die in the open. Yes, monsieur, knew all about it. In fact, 50 rats had been found in his offices, which were near the wharves. To tell the truth, he was rather perturbed. Did the doctor think it meant anything serious? Regent couldn't give a definite opinion, but he thought the sanitary service should take action of some kind. Monsieur agreed, and if you think it really is worth the trouble, I'll get an order issue as well. It was about this time that our townsfolk began to show signs of uneasiness. For from April 18th onwards, quantities of dead or dying rats were found in factories and warehouses. In some cases, the animals were killed to put an end to their agony. From the outer suburbs to the center of the town, in all the byways where the doctor's duties took him, in every thoroughfare, rats were piled up in garbage cans or lying in long lines in the gutters. The evening papers that day took up the matter and inquired whether or not the city fathers were going to take steps and what emergency measures were contemplated to abate this particularly disgusting nuisance. Actually, the municipality had not contemplated doing anything at all, but now a meeting was convened to discuss the situation. An order was transmitted to the sanitary services to collect the dead rats at daybreak every morning. When the rats had been collected, 2 municipal trucks were to take them to be burned in the town incinerator. But the situation worsened in the following days. There were more and more dead vermin in the streets, and the collectors had bigger truckloads every morning. On the 4th day, the rats began to come out and die in batches. From the basements, cellars, and sewers, they emerged in long, wavering flies into the light of day. Swayed helplessly, they did a sort of pirouette and fell dead at the feet of the horrid onlookers. At night, in passages and alleys, their shrill little dead cries could be clearly heard. In the mornings, the bodies were found lining the gutters, each with a gout of blood, like a red flower, on its tapering muzzle. Some were bloated and already began to rot, others rigid with their whiskers still erect. Even in the busy heart of the town, you found them piled in little heaps on landings and backyards. Some stole forth to die singly in the halls of public offices, in school playgrounds, and even on cafe terraces. Our townsfolk were amazed to find such busy centers as the place of des armes, the boulevard, the promenade along the waterfront, dotted with repulsive little corpses. After the daily cleanup of the town, which took place at sunrise, there was a brief respite, then gradually the rats began to appear again in numbers that went on increasingly throughout the day. People out at night would often feel underfoot the squeaky roundness of a still warm body. It was as if the earth on which our houses stood were being purged of its secreted humors, thrusting up to the surface the abscesses and pus clots that had been forming on the entrails. You must picture the consternation of our little town. Here to go, so tranquil, and now, out of the blue, shaken to its core, like a quite healthy man who all of a sudden feels his temperature shoot up and the blood seething like wildfire in his veins. I hope you're enjoying it so far. Michael's death marked, one might say, the end of the first period, that of a bewildering portent, and the beginning of another, relatively more trying, in which the perplexity of the early days gradually gave place to panic. Reviewing that first phase in the light of subsequent events, our townsfolk realized that they had never dreamed it possible that our little town should be chosen out for the scene of such grotesque happenings as the wholesale death of rats in broad daylight, or the decease of concierge through exotic malaise. In this respect, they were wrong, and their views obviously called for revision. Still, if things had gone thus far and no further, force of habit would doubtless have gained the day, as unusual. But other members of our community, not as menials or poor people, were to follow the path down which Michael, had led the way. And it was then that fear, and with fear, serious reflection began. In this respect, our town folk were like everybody else, wrapped up in themselves. In other words, they were humanists. They disbelieved in pestilence. A pestilence isn't a thing made to man's measure. Therefore, we can tell ourselves that pestilence is a mere bogey of the mind, a bad dream that will pass away. But it doesn't always pass away. And from one bad dream to another, it is man who passes away. And the humanists, first of all, because they haven't taken their precautions, our townsfolk were not more to blame than others. They forgot to be modest. That was all. And thought that everything still was possible for them, which presupposed that pestilence were impossible. They went on doing business, arranged for journeys, and formed views. How should they have given a thought to anything like plague, which rules out any future, cancels journeys, silences the exchange of views? They fancied themselves free, and no one will ever be free so as long as there is pestilence. So how can we compare something so deadly to what's happening now? In the beginning, a lot of people started, and a lot of people didn't take anything too seriously. I took things seriously and was the only one, and had to ask my principal if I could around people because I didn't trust anybody. And then the shutdown to stop things. I mean, I knew Spirit was talking to me. I already knew what was going on. I knew the agenda that was at foot. And yeah. If you don't believe in that, that's okay. Perfectly fine. But then you're not watching and reading and doing a lot of the research that you should be doing. This part got me real good. One word landed me pretty good. On the day after the committee meeting, the fever notched another small advance. It even found its way into the papers, but discreetly. Only a few brief references to it were made. On the following day, however, Rion observed the small official notices had been just put up about the town, though in places where they would not attract much attention. It was hard to find in these notices any indication that the authorities were facing the situation squarely. The measures enjoined were far from draconian, and one had the feeling that many concessions had been made to a desire not to alarm the public. Does anybody know where the origins of draconian comes from? And if you don't believe in the Dracos, you should do some digging into that. I mean, there is a constellation called Draconian. There are things that this world has been covering up, and that word comes from somewhere. The instructions began with a bold statement that a few cases of malignant fever had been reported in Oran. It was not possible as yet to say if this fever was contagious. The symptoms were not so marked as to be really protruding, and the authorities felt sure they could rely on the townspeople to treat the situation with composure. Nonetheless, guided by a spirit of prudence that all would appreciate, the prefect was putting into force some precautionary measures. If these measures were carefully studied and properly applied, they would obviate any risk of this being so, the prefect felt no doubt that everybody in his jurisdiction would wholeheartedly second his personal efforts. Thus, too, they came to know the incorrigible sorrow of all prisoners and exiles, which is to live in company with a memory that serves no purpose. Even the past, of which they thought incessantly, had a savor only of regret, for they would have wished to add to it all they regretted having left undone, while they might yet have done it with the men or women who return they now awaited, just as in all the activities, even the relatively happy ones, of their life as prisoners, they kept vainly trying to include the absent one. And thus there was always something missing in their lives, hostile to the past, impatient of the present, and cheated of the future. We were much like those whom men's justice or hatred forces to live behind prison bars. Thus, the only way of escaping from that intolerable leisure was to set the trains running again in one's imagination, and in filling the silence with the fancied tickle of a doorbell, or practice abstain mute. Still, if it was an exile, it was, for most of us, exile in one's own home. And though the narrator experienced only the common form of exile, he cannot forget the case of those who, like Rampart, the journalist, and a good many others, had to endure an aggravated deprivation, since, being travelers caught by the plague and forced to stay where they were cut off both from the person with whom they wanted to be and from their homes as well. In the general exile, they were the most exiled, since while time gave rise for them, as for all of us, to the suffering appropriate to it, there was always for them the space factor. They were obsessed by it, and at every moment knocked their heads against the walls of this huge and alien laser house, secluding them from their lost homes. These were the people, no doubt, whom often saw wandering forlornly in the dust town at all hours of the day, silently invoking nightfalls, known to them alone, and the day springs of their happier land. And they fed their despondency with fleeting intimidations, messages of disconcerting, as a flight of swallows, a dew fall at sundown, or the queer glints the sun sometimes dapes on empty streets. As for that outside world, which can always offer an escape from everything, they shut their eyes to it, bent as they were on cherishing the all too real phantoms of their imagination, and conjuring up with all their might pictures of land where a special play of light, 2 or 3 hills, a favorite tree, a woman's smile, composed for them a world that nothing could replace. Sounds familiar? I mean, so eloquently put. Sounds like our lockdowns, doesn't it? Again, I'm skipping around, trying to encapsulate some of this, because it sounds familiar, doesn't it? But where some saw abstraction, others saw the truth. The first month of the plague ended gloomily, with a violent recrudescence of the epidemic and a dramatic sermon preached by Father Pentelow, the Jesuit priest who had given an arm to old Michael when he was tottering home at the start of his illness. Father had already made his mark with frequent contributions to the Oran Geographical Society. These dealt chiefly with ancient inscriptions on which he was an authority. But he had also reached a wider, specialist public with a series of lectures on present-day individualism. In these, he had shown himself a stalwart champion of Christian doctrine at its most precious and purest equality, remote from modern-day laxity and the obscurantism of the past. On these occasions, he had not shrunk from trouncing his hearers with some vigorous home truths, hence a local celebrity. Why I read this book is very important. It was brought to my attention some time ago that the 19 thing was just one of many other things that were going to hit the United States and around the world. What did the mice have and the rats? Fleas. Who's man's best friend? Doggos. There was something that they were going to unleash out west, that a Black Hawk helicopter intercepted in the middle of a very busy California highway. The fleas that was next, and the mnemonic, 0 case fatality rate. And I can bet you it was the Jesuits who planned that out. If you really think, like all my other talks about religion, if you think those people are good, oh dear. How many of your stars do that? How many of you idolatrize those stars? How many of you follow that nonsensical crap? I bet you many people do. And yes, this is I love you in sign language. Invert it. Evil. Everything has been inverted. Everything you know is inverted. And then within the inversion, they have to tell you the truth. It's their karma, not ours, unless you're a Satanist. Or you follow Enlil. Everything has been inverted. And there has been good people trying to put the information out there to wake your consciousness up. Wake up. And I believe Albert Camus was one of them. Definitely. I mean, his books are stellar. They might be fiction, but they're based on a lot of truth. I mention all of this to say, do your research. Stop watching television. Tell a lie. Stop. Do yourself a favor and stop. I'm serious. There's a lot going on right now. A lot. I'm not saying all priests are evil. I'm not saying everybody is evil. But there's a lot of people who know what they're preaching. And they know the word you think is of God is of Satan. Do the research. How many Bibles have been written? Who wrote the Bibles? Who edited the Bibles? There's plenty of Bibles. There's the Ducat Bible. There's the Standard Version Bible. There's the King James Bible. And there's a plethora more. Why is there so much division in religion? Who wrote everything? Look it up. Why is there 3 different popes? The white, the gray, the black. Pepe Orsini. Go look that name up. The Maximus clan. Look it up. There's one of your popes for you. They don't want you to know. They don't. Why don't they want you to know? Because the design they had all along was to control everybody and to enslave everybody. And they almost got away with it too. Almost. But I'm letting my tongue run away with me and attributing too much importance to the worthy man. Actually, he played only an indirect role in the great change of heart about which I want to tell you. The most he did to me was to touch off a train of thoughts. When I was 17, my father asked me to come to hear him speak in court. There was a big case on at the Assize, and probably he thought I'd see him to be his best advantage. Also, I suspected he hoped I'd be duly impressed by the pomp and ceremony of the law and encouraged to take up his profession. I could tell he was keen on my going, and the prospect of seeing a side of my father's character so different from that which we saw at home appealed to me. Those were absolutely the only reason I had for going to the trial. What happened in court had always seemed to me as natural, as much in the order of things as a military parade on the 14th of July or a school speech day. My notions on the subject were purely abstract, and I have never given it serious thought. The only picture I carried away with me of the day's proceeding was a picture of a criminal. I had little doubt he was guilty of what crime is no great matter. That little man, about 30, with sparse sandy hair, seemed so eager to confess everything, so genuinely horrified at what he'd done and what was going to be done with him, that after a few minutes I had eyes for nothing and no one else. He looked like a yellow owl scared blind by too much light. His tie was slightly awry. He kept biting his nails, those of one hand only, his right. I needed go on, need I? You understood. He was a living human being. And indeed, as he listened to the cries of joy rising from the town, Villeneuve remembered that such joy is always implied. He knew that those jubilant crowds did not know but could have learned from books that the plague, Bacillus, never dies or disappears for good, that they can lie dormant for years and years in furniture and linen chests, that it bides in time in bedrooms, cellars, trunks, and bookshelves, and that perhaps the day would come when, for the bane and the enlightening of men, it would rouse up in its rats again and send them forth to die in a happy city. You are home in quality. Go read this. Perfect. An amazing book. No, I'm being real. That's an amazing book. Next book. Resistance, Rebellion, and Death. We're going to read the back. In the speech he gave upon accepting the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1957, Albert Camus said that a writer cannot serve today those who make history. He must serve those who are subject to it. And in these 23 political essays, he demonstrates his commitment to history's victims, from the fall Marquis of the French Resistance to the casualties of the Cold War. Resistance, Rebellion, and Death displays Camus' rigorous moral intelligence addressing issues that range from colonial warfare in Algeria to the social cancer of capital punishment. But this stirring book is above all a reflection on the problem of freedom, and as such belongs to the same tradition as the works that gave Camus his reputation as the conscience of our century, The Stranger, The Rebel, and the Myth of Sisyphus, which I love that book too. But I'm keeping on today's topic. And I'm just going to read some quotes and passages from this book. You said to me, the greatness of my country is beyond price. Anything is good that contributes to its greatness. And in a world where everything has lost its meaning, those who, like us young Germans, are lucky enough to find a meaning in the destiny of our nation, must sacrifice everything else. I loved you then, but at that point we diverged. No, I told you, I cannot believe that everything must be subordinate to a single end. There are means that cannot be excused. And I should like to be able to love my country and still love justice. I don't want just any greatness for it, particularly a greatness born of blood and falsehood. I want to keep it alive by keeping justice alive. I don't want any greatness for it, particularly a greatness born of blood and falsehood. I want to keep it alive by keeping justice alive. You retorted well. You don't love your country. So much could be said for that right there. What your victory could not penetrate, your defeat will bring to an end. Man is that force which ultimately cancels all tyrants and gods. He is the force of evidence. Human evidence is what we must preserve, and our certainty at present comes from the fact that its fate and our country's fate are linked together. It would be impossible for me to repeat to you often that this is where we part company. We had formed an idea of our country that put her in her proper place amid other great concepts: friendship, mankind, happiness, our desire for justice. This led us to be severe with her. But in the long run, we were the ones who were right. We didn't bring her any slaves, and we debased nothing for her sake. We waited patiently until we saw clearly, and in poverty and suffering, we had the joy of fighting at the same time for all we loved. You, on the other hand, are fighting against everything in man that does not belong in the mother country. Your sacrifices are inconsequential because your hierarchy is not the right one and because your values have no place. The heart is not all you betray. The intelligence takes its revenge. You have not paid the price it asks, not made the heavy contribution intelligence must pay to lucidity. From the depths of defeat, I can tell you that is your downfall. Because you're going down. Going down. Words always take on the color of the deeds or the sacrifices they invoke. That's good. The most painful thing to bear is seeing a mockery made of what one loves. That's for damn sure. Meanwhile, refusing to accept that despair and the tortured world, I merely wanted men to rediscover their solidarity in order to wage war against their revolting fate. Because you were tired of fighting heaven, you relaxed in the exhausting adventure in which you had to mutilate souls and destroy the world. We thought that happiness was the greatest of conquests, a victory over the fate imposed upon us. Such a genius. Genius. It is bursting with all the fires of hope and suffering. It has the flame of lucid courage and all the glow, not only of liberation, but of tomorrow's liberty. In my opinion, if hell existed, it would have to look like those interminable gray streets where everyone was wearing black. But for the simpler among us, the evil of our times can be defined by its effects rather than by its cause. That evil is the state, whether a police state or a bureaucratic state. Its proliferation in all countries under cover of the most varied ideological pretexts. The revolting security granted it by mechanical and psychological means of repression make of the state a mortal danger for anything that is best in each of us. From this point of view, contemporary political society in any form is despicable. This is just what I said, and this is why state of siege represents a break that aims to spare nothing. But you did everything you could to be ill-informed by developing the art of forgetting. Because we're repeating 1938. Hell, mister. Show me your papers. Do you think that's normal? Oh, you can't be a part of society unless you have papers. Oh, where's my Jude star now? Does that seem and feel really nice? So then look how it makes me feel that I can't work because you're afraid of something that is recoverable. And note, there's an agenda behind that. Are we getting the gist of why I'm reading this? History is repeating itself. Are you taking notes yet? Are you learning anything? I'm going to give you a little clue, as this is very hitting on a lot of communism. Both parties, 80%, they're all communists. They're trained Marxists. And most of those Marxists that started the revolution and their own doctrines were Jesuits. No one's clean. No one religion is. There are some of us who do not want to keep silent about anything. It is our whole political society that nauseates us. It will probably seem to you that I am getting very excited about a small matter. Then let me for once speak in my own name. The world I live in is loathsome to me, but I feel one with the men who suffer in it. There are ambitions that are not mine, and I should not feel at ease if I had to make my way by relying on the paltry privileges granted to those who adapt themselves to this world. Oh, because you want to do things. But it seems to me that there is another ambition that ought to be long to all writers, to bear witness and to shout out loud every time it is possible, insofar as our talent allows, for those who are enslaved as we are. That is the very ambition you question in your article, and I shall consistently refuse you the right to question it so long as the murder of a man angers you only when the man shares your ideas. Damn it. This man is genius. Genius. For freedom is refused not because of its privileges, as some would have us believe, but because of its exhausting tasks. Yes. For those, on the other hand, whose function and passion consist in granting liberty all its rights and duties, know that this requires a daily effort and a constant vigilance in which pride and humility play equal parts. If we are tempted today, Mr. President, to express our all affection for you at this time, oh, it's beautiful. I lack the assurance that allows one to settle everything. It's for damn sure. This does not mean that principles have no meaning. An opposition of ideas is possible even with weapons in hand, and it is only fair to recognize one's opponent's reasons, even before defending oneself against him. But on both sides, a reign of terror, as long as it lasts, changes the scales of values. When one's own family is in immediate danger of death, one may want to instill in one's family a feeling of great generosity and fairness, as these articles clearly show. But let there be no doubt about it, one still feels a natural solidarity with the family in much mortal danger and hopes that it will survive at least, and by surviving, have a chance to show its fairness. If that is not honor and true justice, then I know nothing that is of any use in this world. When fighting for your truth, you must take care not to kill it with the very arms you are using to defend it. Only under such a double conditions do words resume their living meaning. Terror does not involve, except toward a worse terror. The scaffold does not become any more liberal. The gallows are not tolerant. The first thing to define totalitarian society whether of the right or of the left, is a single party, and the single party has no reason to destroy itself. This is why the only society capable of evolution and liberalization, the only one that deserves both our critical and our active support, is a society that involves a plurality of parties as a part of its structure. It alone allows one to denounce, hence to correct, injustice and crime. It alone today allows one to denounce torture, disgraceful torture, as contemptible in Algiers as in Budapest. Or we can say the planet. If absolute truth belongs to anyone in this world, it certainly does not belong to the man or party that claims to possess it. When historical truth is involved, the more anyone claims to possess it, the more he lies. Who has all the books? In the final analysis, he becomes a murderer of truth. Bum, bum, bum. Hence, it was necessary to assassinate the men who are fighting the lie and then try to dishonor them through a reversed lie by calling them fascists. That, hot damn. And this is the socialism of the gallows. Oh. The truth is that no nation has a monopoly on peace. I mean, geez Louise. Expectancy for a communist newspaper perhaps amounts to saying that the whole population of Hungary is fascist except Kedar, his policemen and his executioners. But the factual truth is that we have seen a revolt of workers, intellectuals, and peasants who wanted national independence and personal freedom. The real fascism, to speak clearly, is the fascism of Kedar and the Khrushchev. Okay, I'm not pronouncing that. Who methodically crushed a popular revolt and the Russian government, which permitted it. I have to read this. I do. It's ridiculous. And I'm just gonna put this out here before I read this part. I don't believe in a right or a left. Because at the end of the day, both sides are screwed, have been screwed. And a lot of people, more so on the right, have woken up. More people now on the left are starting to wake up. The slumber, the brainwashing, the understanding of what's been going on. It doesn't make you a bad person that you're on that side. Not at all. The majority of everybody I know is on that side. That doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make me hate anybody. It's all about who they chose to puppet the strings, right? To be the puppet, right? Got it? They infiltrated the left in the United States, particularly in such a way They started out with the Republicans first. It started since the dawn of time. But when the three-letter agencies started coming into an existence, Daddy Bush, Mr. CIA himself, and his cohorts, and the three war castles, you can look that up. Amazing video about common law, land law, civil law, admiralty law, JFK, and onward, we're all infiltrated. You never had a vote. The illusion was there that you voted. You never voted for your president or your vice president. Mind you, half of all of your counties, cities, mayors, governors, they're placed there. There's an illusion that you voted for them, but they were placed there. So just mind you that everybody's been caught up. Everyone has been caught up in this lie. And it's not your fault. No one's putting a blame on you guys. So please understand, what I'm about to read is not mocking or trying to get anybody upset. This is Camus. Conformity is on the left. Subject to these reservations, we must hope for a common rallying. But first, our leftist intellectuals, who have swallowed so many insults and may well have to begin doing so again, would have to undertake a critique of the reasoning and ideologies to which they have hitherto subscribed, which have wreaked the havoc they have seen in our most recent history. That will be the hardest thing. We must admit that today conformity is on the left. To be sure, the right is not brilliant, but the left is in complete decadence, a prisoner of words, caught in its own vocabulary, capable merely of stereotyped replies, consistently at a loss when faced with the truth, from which it nevertheless claimed to derive its laws. The left is schizophrenic and needs doctoring through pitiless self-criticism, exercise of the heart, close reasoning, and a little modesty. Until such an effort at re-examination is well underway, any rallying will be unless and even harmful. Meanwhile, the intellectual's role will be to say that the king is naked when he is, and not to go into raptures over his imaginary trappings. In order to strike a constructive note, however, I shall propose, as one of the preliminaries to any future gathering, the unqualified acceptance of the following principle: none of the evils that totalitarianism, defined by the single party and the suppression of all opposition, claims to remedy is worse than totalitarianism itself. In conclusion, I believe, as people say, I believe in God, creator of heaven and earth, that the indispensable conditions for intellectual creation and historical justice are liberty and the free confronting of differences. Without freedom, no art lives only on the restraints it imposes on itself and dies of all others. But without freedom, no socialism either, except the socialism of the gallows. And this is about guillotine, reflection on the guillotine. Funny I should say guillotine. It's in Obamacare. Guillotines are in Obamacare. It was written down. Go look that up. Guillotines. Because with a certain Rothschild walked out claiming he was the second coming of Jesus. Oh, but that's not really Jesus. That's a Rothschild. You're dead. Fun. That's me. The Rebel. By one of the most profoundly influential thinkers of our century, The Rebel is a classic essay on revolution. For Albert Camus, the urge to revolt is one of the essential dimensions of human nature, manifested in man's timeless Promethean struggle against the conditions of his existence, as well as the popular uprisings against established orders throughout history. And yet, with an eye toward the French Revolution and its regicides and decides, he shows how inevitably the course of revolution leads to tyranny. Oh, wow. As old regimes throughout the world collapse, The Rebel resonates with an ardent, eloquent, and supremely rational voice of conscience for our tumultuous time. Read his stuff. It is amazing. Amazing. I'm animated. So again, I'm going to read some excerpts I underlined. And this is like, I underlined this stuff like 16 years ago. To remain silent is to give the impression that one has no opinions, that one wants nothing. And in certain cases, it really amounts to wanting nothing. Better to die on one's feet than to live on one's knees. That's for damn sure. There is not enough love in the world to squander it on anything but human beings. Rebellion, though apparently negative, since it creates nothing, is profoundly positive in that it reveals the part of man which must always be defended. We can only deduce from this observation that rebellion is the act of an educated man who is aware of his own rights. Yes. In a world entirely dominated by history, which ours threatens to become, there are no longer any mistakes, but only crimes, of which the greatest is moderation. In Lucretius' epic poem, Epicurus himself becomes the proud rebel he never actually was. When in the eyes of all mankind, humanity was leading an abject existence on earth, crushed beneath the weight of a religion whose hideous aspect peered down from the heights of the celestial regions. The first to dare, a Greek, a man, raised his mortal eyes and challenged the gods. In this way, religion, in its turn, was overthrown and trampled underfoot, and this victory elevates us to the heavens. Here we can sense the difference between this new type of blasphemy and the ancient malediction. License to destroy supposes that you yourself can be destroyed. Therefore, you must struggle and dominate. The law of this world is nothing but the law of force, its driving force, the will to power. You are already dead to the world. That's for sure. That's how it feels anyway. The tortured bodies return in their elements to the nature and will be born again. Because we don't die. To love someone whom we'll never see again is to give a cry of exultation as one perishes in the flames of passion. One lives only in and for the moment in order to achieve the brief and vivid union of a tempestuous heart united to the tempest. The threat of morality, which hangs over us, makes everything abortive. Only the cry of anguish can bring us to life. Exploration takes the place of truth. To this extent, the apocalypse becomes an absolute value in which everything is confounded love and death, conscience and culpability. The impassive rebel does not flinch before the eyes of God. Gotta skip that. Nope, nope, no, 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 no. Cannot read that. The same man who so violently took the part of innocence, who trembled at the suffering of a child, who wanted to see with his own eyes the lamb lie down with the lion, the victim embrace his murderer, for the moment that he rejects divine coherence and tries to discover his own rule of life, recognizes the legitimacy of murder. But he lived only for what is not of this world, and his proud search for the absolute is precisely that removed him from the world of which he loved no part. Everything that has existed is eternal. The sea throws it back on the shore. Oh, that's funny. It is impossible to give a clear account of the world, but art can teach us to reproduce it, just as the world reproduces itself in the course of its eternal gyrations. There's a lot about Nietzsche in this section, but we'll keep it clean. I have to skip some parts, guys. I really urge many of you to read his work. It is absolutely amazing. Human insurrection in its exalted and tragic forms is only and can only be prolonged protest against death, a violent accusation against the universal death penalty. The rebel obstinately confronts a world condemned to death and the impenetrable obscurity of the human condition with his demand for life and absolute clarity. But it is a book about rights, not about facts. And at no time is it a collection of sociological observations. The social contract amplifies and dogmatically explains the new religion, whose God is reason, confused with nature, and whose representative of earth, in place of the king, is the people considered as an expression of the general will. Ooh. The human heart advances from nature to violence, from violence to morality. Morality is therefore only nature finally restored after centuries of alienation. Man only has to be given law in accord with nature and with his heart, and he will cease to be unhappy and corrupt. Yep. Oh boy. I marked down some pretty disturbing shit. I can't read what I just put down. It would be leaving very little to leave a life in which one must be either the accomplice or the silent witness of evil. I'm going to read that again because it's good. It will be leaving very little to leave a life in which one must be either the accomplice or silent witness of evil. As many people are being silent about what's actually happening in our world right now, especially to people like me who didn't ask to be treated the way like a leper. To act is to destroy in order to give birth to the spiritual reality of consciousness. Yes. Yes. The only escape is to create order with the use of weapons. He goes into Hegel. That's just genius in itself. Thus, there is only one hell, and it is on this earth. And it is against this that the struggle must be waged. Because this is hell. Politics is religion, and transcendent Christianity, that of the hereafter, establishes the masters of the earth by means of the slaves, renunciation, and creates one master more beneath the heavens. That is why atheism and the revolutionary spirit are only two aspects of the same movement of liberation. He's still going into Hegel. I am a stranger to the order of existing things. I have nothing to do with it. Thus, the only value resides in rational egoism. Because that's really where a lot of people are sitting right now in their minds. My personal self is dead forever. My life is the true life. It is in some way identified with the absolute life. Yeah. He goes into Marxism, communism, humanity marches by way of crimes, violence, and death towards the final consummation which will justify everything. Oh, he goes into Hegel's dialectic. I forgot about that. So good. Man is born into a world of production and social relations. The unequal opportunities of different lands, the more or less rapid improvements in the means of production, and the struggle for life have rapidly created social inequities that have been crystallized into antagonisms between production and distribution, and consequently into class struggles. Where do you think that all lies into? Slavery. The end of history is not exemplary or perfectionist value. It is an arbitrary and terroristic principle. Yep. Sorry, guys. I'm just looking for some good. Every man is a criminal who he believed himself innocent. That's right. So everybody who knows what you're doing, knowing that you're doing evil things, there are some trials after World War II that we didn't win, by the way. Didn't win it. But those trials, they're gonna start happening more. It's happening now, but it's gonna happen more. So forever hold your peace and in your knowledge of what you're doing. Denying people their basic human rights. And then if you claim you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim and you're a good faith person and you're denying people their right to live because of a choice they made, I mean, I feel like we're in the AIDS epidemic all over again. I thought you weren't allowed to ask that kind of stuff, but I have to do that to go to places. Those who reject the agony of living and dying wish to dominate. They're in fear right now. Big time. In art, rebellion is consummated and perpetuated in the act of real creation, not in its criticism or commentary. Revolution, in its turn, can only affirm itself in a civilization and not in terror or tyranny. Lucifer also has died with God, and from his ashes has arisen a spiteful demon who does not even understand the object of his venture. Oh, Enki, save us all, Enki. At this moment, when each of us must fit an arrow to his bow and enter the lists anew to reconquer within history and in spite of it, that which he owes already, the thin yield of his fields, the brief love of this earth, at the moment when at last a man is born, it is time to forsake our age and its adolescent furies. The bow bends and the wood complains. At the moment of supreme tension, there will leap into flight an unswerving arrow, a shaft that is inflexible and free. An exile in the kingdom. What are we going through right now, guys? Seriously. Seriously, seriously, seriously. If you want to read a literary genius, please pick these books up. Albert Camus is freaking amazing. And even though in this one, there's a lot of nihilism, existentialism, a lot of racy topics in this rebel, but that's the point. What is a rebel? That's what I am. This is basically a little bit of the stage that we're going through right now. And this is the beginning. And even though this is not written about the United States whatsoever, there's a lot of parallels between other revolutionary wars in other countries and other wars that have happened in other countries that are definitely affecting us in the same situation as what's going on now. But this is a planetary thing, what's been going on. And the fact of the matter is that I made it through. I'm sorry if I sound all froggy, but I gotta do Spirit's work, and Spirit made me do it. So I hope you enjoyed the parallels of what is going on in our world right now with everything Camus. Brilliant. Just like my Schopenhauer. Albert nails it. nails it. Even if this is fiction, it's still based on what's going on right now in the world. Just like the year after I was born. That book, too. But we can't cover that. Not allowed. So, guys, I don't know how much longer I can keep the internet on. Don't know. I'm going to try my hardest. But I'm on the cliff with 2 fingers holding on right now. With everything. And if things don't pick up and stuff in the world doesn't start happening soon, I'm going to be out of everything until I can pick my life back up. So I'm going to try to get as many videos in until that day occurs. I'm going to try to rest. And hopefully get my voice 100% back. I'm going to be doing some episodes on a wasp bay. The Love one is definitely coming back up. I might do more of the Keys of Enoch. And if you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Keep in mind, I am unable to get some kid books. I have some to do. I haven't uploaded Read Aloud for Children in a while. I'm going to be hopefully doing a reading, oracle card readings soon. If you're interested in a reading, please email me. If you have it within your heart to help me out, please, the information is down in the comment, in the drop box below. I appreciate everything all of you have done for me thus far. I seriously am giving you all love and light. I know this is a very difficult time for so many of us. I am working even in my mummified, can't move my body in traction. I'm still trying in every way possible to make things happen for my life. I don't know why I'm being punished and tortured. And I don't know why I have to hit rock bottom 3-4 times for anything to manifest. So I'm trying, guys. But I want to thank each and every one of you. Go buy those books or a Kindle. Do them. Read them. Grow your brains because they're amazing books. And I hope all of you have an amazing night. Stay frosty. It's getting crazy out there. Bye, guys.